Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating framework for our relationships. It comes from the philosopher Gerardo Schmedling, and its core idea is pretty radical. It suggests that the love and peace we're all looking for, well, it's not found by trying to change other people, it's found by changing ourselves.
So let's kick things off for the question that, I think pretty much everyone has asked themselves at some point. Relationships are supposed to bring us joy, right? So why do they so often spiral into misunderstanding, conflicts, and just pain? Well, the answer, according to this manual from the School of the Magic of Love, is, well, it's both simpler and way more profound than you might think. It says the problem isn't out there with our partners, our family, or our friends. Nope. The real work is right in here. Okay, so let's get into this first big idea. This philosophy argues that our suffering doesn't actually come from what other people do, or from the stuff that happens to us. The true source of our pain is how our own mind chooses to interpret all of it. And this quote, man, it just cuts right to the heart of it. All our suffering, according to this, comes from our own internal programming, these unexamined beliefs and the stories we tell ourselves about what's happening. So, in other words, it's not the event. It's the story we tell ourselves about the event. So, okay, what are these filters that are messing with our view of the world? The manual points to 4 big ones. Limiting beliefs, these ideas we've just accepted as true without ever checking. Old traumas that are still bleeding into our present. This deep down fear of losing something or not getting what we want. And finally, just overthinking things without any real-world proof. And these things, they basically become these warped lenses we see everything through. All right, so if our own interpretations are what's creating our reality, then the big question is, how do we change them? Well, the manual suggests it's a journey, one where we evolve our behavior through 3 very distinct stages.
It's a journey, really, that unfolds in 3 main levels. First, we start at the instinctual level, just reacting to things to survive. Then, most of us move into learned behavior, where we start acting based on all those fears and old wounds we were just talking about. The goal, though, is to get to that 3rd level, conscious behavior, which isn't guided by fear, but by a deep understanding and acceptance of life.
And this is the key, right here. It's all about what's driving us. At first, we're driven by survival, then by pain and fear, which just makes us react and judge everything. But when we start operating from consciousness, the driver shifts completely. It becomes understanding and love. You're no longer judging and condemning. Instead, you're accepting and acting with purpose. Okay, let's bring this all back to our relationships, which this philosophy breaks down into 2 basic types. And honestly, for a lot of people, this is where it really clicks. So the manual makes this really sharp distinction. On one side, you have relationships of destiny. This is kind of the default setting, where it feels like life is just throwing stuff at you, They're full of conflict and resistance. But on the other side, you have conscious relationships. These are different. These are built on purpose, and they're defined by harmony, acceptance, and peace. And you can see here, the cause and effects is it's crystal clear. There's a straight line from how you behave to what you get. If you're critical, aggressive, demanding, what the manual calls egoistic or, self-centered behaviors, you're going to get conflict and distance. But if your behavior is based on understanding, calm and adaptability, amorous behaviors, the result is friendship, peace, and harmony. It's that simple. All right, this leads us to the really practical nuts and bolts part of all this. If we want to build those conscious relationships, what are the actual tools you can use? So the manual gives us these 7 commitments. But here's the crucial part. These aren't a checklist of things you have to force yourself to do. They're the qualities that just naturally bubble up when you're coming from a place of love. Like, acceptance isn't some chore. It's just what happens naturally when you finally stop trying to make people different. Freedom is what you automatically give when you let go of your fear of losing someone. And this all builds up to this really powerful metaphor for how we fit into our own lives. Basically, it says that inside each of us, there are 3 different roles we can play. And the one we choose determines everything about our relationships. First up, you've got the matter. This is that part of us that feels like a victim. When we're in this mode, we feel totally powerless, like things are just happening to us and we're at the mercy of the world. It's a feeling of just constant unease. Then there's the instrument. This is the part of us that gets sick and tired of being a victim and decides to fight back. It tries to force things, to control reality with aggression and sheer stubbornness. But because it's still coming from a place of fear and not understanding, it just ends up creating even more conflict and frustration.
And that brings us to the third role, the sculptor. See, the sculptor gets it. They understand the only thing they have real control over, the only thing they can truly shape, is their own mind, their own inner world. And by doing that, they don't have to force the outside world to change. They shape their experience of it with wisdom and with love.
And here's the really bold promise the manual makes. Now, this doesn't mean your relationships will suddenly be perfect. No way. What it means is that if you are fully committed to being the sculptor, you stop seeing things as failures. Every single interaction, even the tough ones, just becomes another chance to learn and understand. You literally can't fail anymore.
So that leaves us with this final thought. This philosophy hands the tools right to you. You're not the clay being shaped, and you're not the hammer trying to force things. You are the sculptor. The only question left is, what are you going to create?